Welcome to 28.5 Women's Basketball, where we explore a unique and authentic perspective on the women's game, break down upcoming matchups, and discuss the latest news and trends in women's basketball. We are your hosts. I'm Sydney Story, and I played basketball at the University of Tennessee under Pat Summitt.
And I'm Becca Goodman, and I played at the University of Notre Dame under Muffet McGraw. And we're thrilled to have you join us today. Before we jump in, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoy what you hear, be sure to tune in each week and don't forget to follow, download, and listen to give an assist and share the love. Now let's get started with today's episode.
Becca, what's up? Episode 27. Here we come.
Sid, every week is a good week in women's basketball. And I don't know the last time people have been able to say that. Every week. Truly, every week is a good week of basketball.
Yeah, we had to shift through which games we wanted to talk about. And we've watched a lot of games the past week, and there have been a lot of good ones, to your point. And it was actually tough this week. I think we settled on some of the top ones here, but certainly have some other shout outs we want to give on some of those other games. So I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be a great episode.
Absolutely. Ready to dive in.
Let's do it. So quarter number one, we are going to highlight two top 10 upsets. Quarter number two, we are going to highlight the top 10 handling business in two games there. Quarter number three, we are going to talk about some upcoming matchups and games to watch. And then quarter number four, to wrap things up, we're going to talk about what's in the news. And this segment is really called What a Miss. And we will talk all about a shocker to the WNBA world where we've got a pretty strong opinion on it. So I think it's going to be fun.
All right, let's get ready and jump into that first quarter. So jumping in, highlighting two games, the specific one that I'm going to dig into a bit is USC beat UCLA. Down goes the unanimous, undefeated number one UCLA. They came into this game 23-0. No one's beat them. Had some close ones, but they've really been holding court here. And then we had USC, who was 21-2 at the time. Now, this game was played at USC. The stars were out. Vanessa Bryant is there. You know, Cheryl Miller's there. In normal USC fashion. And in this game, I'm just going to call it what it is. The lights were shining and Juju was all up in it. I mean, she absolutely went insane. We're going to get to that. But I do just want to first talk about, this is a pretty historic thing. UCLA's first loss really ends their run of being the only nation's last undefeated D1 team. Lauren Betts, she did her thing. She had 18 points, 13 boards, but it really seemed like she was struggling and missed easy bunnies. And we say that, right? We're not her. We're not going against Marshall and, the double team of USC. They were throwing all different types of bodies at her. They were making it very uncomfortable for her. And I really think this is the first time that she saw similar competition at the same skill level. It just wasn't easy for her. It wasn't a standard drop step turnaround shot. She was challenged. She was getting her shot blocked at times. It really was an awkward night for her. But again, she still finishes with a double-double. That's how dominant she is. Kiki Rice also showed up nicely, had 15 points. But all in all, UCLA had 20 turnovers, which led to 21 points by USC. So again, if you're forcing turnovers and able to go commit points on the other end and you're missing bunnies, it's just going to go for a long night. The team specifically missed a lot of shots from the three. They went 2 for 13 for the game for a solid 15%. Definitely needed more from their guards. I know we've talked about this before. We have Lauren Betts inside, Kiki Rice at the point. We just need more consistency from that 2-3 guard aspect. But I don't want to knock how amazing USC played. Sid, USC had 13 blocks in this game. 13
Insane.
blocks.
Yeah, Juju. I mean, down the stretch there, she was all over. She was blocking Lauren Betts.
I know. It was
so entertaining.
Absolutely crazy. And so USC outscored UCLA 24-8 in the fourth quarter, which really set the tone and sealed the deal. This is USC's first win against a number one seed there since 1983. This is overall just their second time in program history beating a number one seed. I mentioned Juju, so now I'm going to give her flowers because it's Juju time. She's the only player, keep this in mind, guys. Like the only player in NBA, WNBA, or D1, men or women's in this century to have a game, everything I'm going to say is more than 35 points, more than 10 rebounds, more than 5 assists, more than 5 blocks, and more than 5 threes made in one game. And she did that against the number one team in the country. Her actual stat line, 38 points, 11 boards, 5 assists, 8 blocks, and she was 6 for 9 from 3-point range. This girl balled out. The lights were shining. She was in it. She was loving it, and she had herself a game. The part that I love the most is after she's getting interviewed on the court, and she just mentions she needed this game. She's had a couple rough weeks, and this was something she needed, and she was happy with how she played. And I mean, who isn't happy with how she played? That was an amazing performance from every aspect of the floor. Sid, what do you think of just that stat line and just how she showed up and just went to work?
Yeah, first of all, I just love watching her play. It's not about the hand signals and the hype every time she knocks down a three. And I don't knock that. I think that's entertaining and fun, and it's more of the current game. She just goes out there and gets it done. And if she's going to show emotion, it's high-fiving, chest bumping with her teammates and just in the grind of the game. She doesn't waste time showboating. She gets back on defense, gets a steal. Like her game is so much fun to watch because she just goes out there and plays the game. That's what it's about for her. And I think these stats speak for themselves. I think it's really interesting because every player we talked about it the last episode around the 3 that were up right now for National Player of the Year. Lauren Betts is on there. Hannah Hidalgo's on there. Juju's on there. I think all 3 of them in different ways at some point this year have made a case for that award. And I think this was the case for Juju. And
yeah, can we have a 3-way tie?
Yeah, she was maybe coming in third a little bit, right? Lauren Betts had consistently throughout the season really had shown up, but it just shows you that it's the end of the season now. Bodies are getting worn down a little bit. And I think Juju's stepping up. If she continues that play, USC is that much better with her beating the century record. I mean, like that's just insane. And like you said, against the number one team in the country. So just a shout out to her. And I think it's going to be really interesting because they have to turn around and play each other again on March 1st. Gotta love conference play. Gotta love playing your rival twice in the season, then potentially again in the conference tournament. So we're going to get to see this matchup again. And you better bet that Lauren Betts and Kiki Rice and the entire UCLA crew are coming out for vengeance on this one. So I think that's going to be a game to tune into on March 1st.
Yeah, without a doubt. I know there was always the UConn Notre Dame matchup where it felt like we just played them like 3 to 4 times a season, every season. So you're getting the highs and lows of that roller coaster, knowing, hey, we just got smacked. Hey, it was close. Hey, we're coming for you. And then, hey, we're able to beat you, right? So I can imagine this is exactly what that rivalry is going to get to because of the amount they play and how good the caliber of teams are, without a doubt.
Absolutely. And what a fun game this was. It was on a little bit late Eastern time, but just a great game overall for women's basketball. So cool. You mentioned it also to see all the celebrities that show up out in LA. Kevin Hart was there. Like there's just cool supporters of the women's game who like to come to these games and just support women's basketball. And I think that's awesome in itself.
Definitely.
All right, let's jump to the second game this first quarter we wanted to highlight. And this one, to me, is one of the most shocking games of the season so far. I was shocked on Sunday when UConn absolutely showed up and knocked South Carolina's front teeth in. Like, I don't even know what to say. From start to finish, UConn looked like the team they've been capable of being all year. And they beat South Carolina 87-58 at South Carolina, snapping that 71-game home win streak. Unbelievable what UConn did. They looked like that team that could make that Final Four and make a run down the stretch here. If they're peaking at the right time here, and I talk about this all the time, and they might be, this is huge momentum for them. Finishing out the rest of the Big East and then heading into the tournament, which is coming up here in really a few weeks. So shout out to UConn and what they did. It is the first loss at home for South Carolina since they lost to North Carolina State on December 3rd of 2020, back to the pandemic days.
It's
So
insane.
that's a long streak right there. It ended the fourth longest home winning streak ever in women's basketball Division I history. And we're talking some really good teams that are in front of that. So shout out to Dawn and all she's been able to do. I really think for UConn, this was a huge game for them because they had not been able to really win the big game yet this year. They lost against Notre Dame. They lost to USC. They lost to Tennessee the week prior. And I think that they really focused in, went to work. You hear AZ Fudd talk about it in every interview after this game, how dialed in they were in practice the past week or so after that Tennessee loss, and they really came out and played UConn basketball. UConn had built a 45-23 lead at the half. It was over at halftime. And maybe the end of the first quarter, which is just shocking for a South Carolina team. Usually they can take a punch and they punch right back. They just really fell flat. And UConn was that aggressor. I texted you. I'm like, dude, they want this game so much. They're absolutely playing with that sense of urgency. And not that South Carolina wasn't. I just think UConn really was with like an exclamation point. It was fun to watch Paige for me, right? Paige isn't really going off with a ton of points in some of these bigger games. She had 7 points at half, but she had 6 assists heading into halftime. I think she's getting it done in other ways. It speaks to the leadership that she brings, that seniority that she brings, the way she helps her team not only on the scoring column, but with things like distributing the basketball and just being a good overall leader. I really just enjoy that part of her game because we all know she's capable of going off for 30 if she wants to. But to see her really distribute the ball, I thought was fun in this one. And balanced scoring all around. The big headliner here, though, is AZ Fudd. So she followed up a career best 34-point performance in a win over St. John's the previous Wednesday, and she had 28 points against South Carolina. So she's just really leveled up again since that Tennessee loss. But we really haven't seen her with the injuries that she's overcome now. We really haven't seen her put solid work in for consistent games. So to see her do that back-to-back games and one of them against South Carolina, I think is like really promising for UConn because they need more scoring. Paige Bucket Beckers needs that help. And I think AZ Fudd is that answer for them. To see her step up is just amazing. She had 6 of UConn's 13 3-pointers, including 4 in the third quarter. So she absolutely just put it away for UConn. Sarah Strong has been consistent all year. That freshman who is just phenomenal. She had 16 points, 13 rebounds, a double-double there. Paige Buckets Beckers also had a double-double in the game. So just really cool to see UConn come out and play the way that we've all said they're probably capable of playing all year, and they're starting to do it, which is scary when we think about the landscape of women's basketball right now and how good some of these top 5, 6 teams really are.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely insane when you look at UConn and South Carolina. They both have 3 losses on their record right now, which I don't know of a time you ever saw that before. UConn's notorious for having undefeated seasons back to back to back or 1 and 2 losses here. South Carolina, same thing. I think even before they went on their amazing streak and won the Natty last year, I think they had seasons where it was 1 or 2. So it's absolutely crazy just in the scope of women's basketball. And I've read this other places, but I just wanted to also highlight it. For the longest time, there was always a 1-2 team women's basketball dominance. It was always that. And it was always Tennessee, UConn. It was, right? Like Notre Dame made a splash here and there. Maryland's made a splash, but nothing consistent to a dynasty or year after year. And I just think this year is incredibly insane because it's whoever's playing well that night. We've seen teams shoot terrible and then come back and win. We've seen teams shoot terrible and lose. We've seen UConn, who just lost to Tennessee, but is finally getting, I think, their core group of players back, that AZ Fudd. I think she's just more comfortable finally. She had like her injury, then she tweaked it, then she's back. They had a loss. It was kind of like a perfect storm of things colliding for her to show up, and man, did she. I think it's absolutely awesome for just our sport and just, to every week, Sid, we come on here, we're like, here's another amazing week, and it's just, you can't write it. No one would have predicted this, and it's so fun. It's just a ton of fun.
It is a ton of fun. It's making the conference tournaments and then the NCAA tournament something that's going to be, I think, amazing to watch this year.
Absolutely.
We're setting this up. These teams are setting this up to be a barn burner in all these games. I'm so excited for it.
Some other notable upsets that we just wanted to mention really quick. An unranked Nebraska beat a number 17 Maryland 91-71. Didn't really expect that. Nebraska's been in and out of the top 25. Maryland, we know they've been as high as maybe a 5 or 6, really dropping off, kind of having some back-to-back losses there. I do know they're injured. I saw Sellers got injured in that game again, so I don't really know if she'll be back. As we're hyping up all these amazing games, you always have this, right? It's the tale of 2 seasons, and some teams can stick it out and fight through, and then some teams have these hiccups. So another unranked loss was Clemson beat a number 19 Georgia Tech by 7. Unranked Louisville, who's scaring me as of lately. It's going to be Notre Dame's last game, but they just beat a number 23 Florida State almost by 15, just over 15. An unranked BYU beat a number 20 Oklahoma State by 4. A number 12 UNC beat number 10 NC State by 1. And the last one is the number 17 West Virginia beat a number 12 Kansas State by 13. So a lot of good games, a lot of movement there. I think this top 25 continues to ebb and flow and just be, our top 10 is kind of staying top 10. But I think after that, it's anybody's game. And it's going to be super important for these teams to make sure they stick in it and get a good bid for the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, speaks to the parity, and it speaks to the point that you've got to show up every night, especially in conference play. And we talk about that a ton. You just never know. There's a lot of unranked teams that were able to knock off ranked teams here. And what an opportunity for those teams. And they were able to seize that moment and go for it. Like, that's so much fun. And that's what makes basketball and competing in sports so much fun, is it's 0-0 to start that game. And if you can put a full 40 minutes together, you can beat anybody.
Yep.
And that's the mentality you got to have. And it's just fun to see some of those upsets. All right, let's jump into quarter number 2. So we've got another 2 games that we want to highlight. And this one is really about the top 10 handling business. So the first game here, we've got Texas beating LSU. They win this one 65-58. I was excited for this one on Sunday. It's a really good SEC matchup now that Texas is in the SEC. And both teams really have put together good conference play heading into this one. It's Texas's 10th straight victory. Texas also earned its 3rd over a top 10 opponent in 8 days. So 3 solid wins for them in an 8-day stretch. That's doing some work right there.
Mm-hmm.
Last episode, you talked about don't mess with Texas. Don't mess with Texas, y'all. They're on the scene right now. First half of this Texas versus LSU game, Texas came out pretty flat. They shot 7 for 37 in the first half. They trailed as much as 12 in the third quarter. So LSU really brought a good game here. I thought consistently for 3 quarters, LSU played really, really well. I think they fell short in that fourth quarter. They didn't really have anyone that took over the game. Booker for the Longhorns, she missed all 11 shot attempts in the first half. So usually she averages nearly 21 points in the first half over the previous 9 games. So that's insane, right? She goes 0 for 11. And she turns it around a little bit in the second half, and I think it was the difference maker for Texas. And Booker's so good. She's got that mid-range game. She's smooth with it. But if your shot's off and you're relying on the 15, 17-footer, that's tougher than if you're somebody that creates by getting to the rack and getting to the free throw line. So it does kind of exploit the game that she goes after. But all in all, I thought that Texas, the girls around her really showed up. I'm a fan of Oldacre. Like, she's fun to watch. That girl bodies girls up. She uses her size. And sometimes you don't see that with some of the bigger women down there, but she's not afraid to throw some bodies out. And I thought that was fun to watch against LSU, and especially against LSU that go pretty hard, that don't back down. And I thought Oldacre held her own when she needed to. And I thought that was good to see. Second half, the LSU Tigers let the Longhorns back in the game with a run of fouls in the third quarter. So LSU just, again, really didn't put together the full 40 minutes. Texas scored 8 of the last 10 points in the quarter from the free throw line. And I have to call this out because this is absolutely amazing. I don't know the last time that I saw this, but Texas went, and maybe if I've ever seen it, Texas went 21 for 21 from the free throw line in the game. Have you ever seen that, Becca?
Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't really, not to that magnitude, not over 20 for sure.
Right.
Not perfect, being perfect from the free throw line with over 20.
And one of the big difference makers down the stretch for them, right? They were getting to the free throw line down the stretch and they were absolutely knocking them down 100% from the free throw line. Again, Texas, Madison Booker scored 16 points, including 4 consecutive free throws in the final 24 seconds, which really sealed the deal for them. Anissa Morrow, man, she shows up every single game for LSU. She is so consistent to me and a great player overall. She had 15 points, 20 rebounds.
Do you know she's only 6'1"? She
That's
is only
amazing.
6'1".
She
The
plays
amount
like
of,
she's 6'6".
yeah, I couldn't agree more. She has dominance inside. I know with Angel Reese last year, she was very much like a mid-range, high post. Her dominance inside is next level. I think it's to put up these types of numbers and consistency. Angel Reese got a lot of hype for it last year, but I mean, Anissa Morrow is better. Like she is better inside, more consistent, knocks down shots, and I mean just has overall better shooting field goal percentage in general. So huge props to her for being 6'1" and just dominating inside.
She's one of the best post players out there. I
Yep.
mean, honestly, she's just so consistent. I hype up the SEC, having played in the SEC, and obviously the SEC is a lot different from when I played. We didn't have Texas A&M, we didn't have Missouri, we certainly didn't have Texas and Oklahoma. But boy, am I excited for the SEC tournament this year. That conference tournament for the SEC is up for grabs to me. I could see LSU winning it. I could see Texas winning it. I could see South Carolina winning it. I'm probably missing some teams that maybe are going to shock us all. I think Tennessee could make a decent run, maybe upset somebody. It's going to be so much fun. I can't wait. I'm just excited. I'm going to hold it back here for a second and I'm going to turn it over to you, Becca.
No, I think it's absolutely going to be a blast to watch all of these, the Big Ten, ACC, and SEC. I just think those are the teams we're talking about. Those are the conferences that have the juggernauts that are coming out and just trying to dominate. And it's when an upset happens, it's shocking, but yet it's not that it's out of the blue, right? It's because these teams are capable and they're putting quarters together, and it's that strategy piece. Let's jump into the second part of our quarter here, where we're going to highlight Notre Dame beats Duke. They beat them by a score of 64-49. And Sid, you always talk about Duke's defense. They're just defensive strategy. They're intense. They're in your face. And man, they absolutely brought it the first half. I was shaky. I was like, what are we doing? And how fitting is it that we just had Melissa Lechleitner on here on our last huddle to answer an amazing question that we got submitted asking, how do you guys feel about Notre Dame's half-court offense? And, we mentioned as long as they rebound, as long as they run, as long as they're playing defense, the offense will come. Man, they didn't play defense that first half. They didn't. Turn the ball over. It was messy, without a doubt. Notre Dame went to a lot of different lineups, just trying to get somebody inside who would rotate, help, come over. And it was always in the post. I felt like we were missing something from the post. Maddie got in foul trouble. We had Caval in there. We had Liza. We had Leah too. I mean, we were switching it up so often, just looking for somebody to bring in that consistency we needed to make us steady inside. Because as we mentioned, rebound, outlet, run gets Hannah, Liv, and Sony going. So I think that's what we're trying to do. And in the meantime, we were turning the ball over like crazy. I think we had 10 turnovers in the first half. So it was a struggle, without a doubt. The halftime score, Notre Dame was up 2 with a barn-burning score of 29-27. I don't think I've ever seen Notre Dame score that low in a half, but at least we went into the half up. I will say, I think they had the best halftime talk possible. Niele probably really dug deep, or maybe it was like she just showed him a mirror and was like, look at it, because you all are doing this to yourselves. You're turning the ball over. You're not playing defense. It was just a lot of inconsistencies. They just seemed like they weren't in a groove. But boy, they really woke up on the defensive end. And when they play defense, it feeds their transition and it feeds their offense. And boy, does it feed it. Notre Dame started the third quarter on a 17-1 run, while Duke went 0 for 6 from the floor and had 4 turnovers. How deflating did that have to be for Duke?
Yeah, good night. It was over at that point. You're not recovering against Notre Dame.
I thought they kept zooming in on Kara Lawson, like, is she going to call a timeout? Is she going to call a timeout? And I think every time she almost tried, she thought maybe they would be okay. And man, it blew up. It was pretty rough. At the end of the third quarter, Notre Dame was up 14. And at that point, the fourth quarter was just window dressing, handling business for Notre Dame. Duke started the game really well. They went 5 for 6 from the floor. But then after that, they were 15 for 47 for 32% from the floor for the whole game. So really shows their ebb and flow. We've talked about Duke's offensive game, knowing like, hey, yeah, they can turn it on defense, but offensively, are they able to compete and match other teams who are equally as high-powered offensively? And I think this was a game that Notre Dame let them dictate the first half, and then obviously Notre Dame went on to play their style of game for the second. Hannah Hidalgo led the way, obviously 19 points, but just want to highlight Olivia Miles's play. I just think she is the ultimate playmaker. Anytime it looked like we were stagnant on offense, which happens, or we saw certain individuals trying to force to get a bucket, to whether it was get theirs or just that's what they thought the play would be and break down to, right? A one-on-one. She comes and gets the ball, and you can tell Niele relies on her for this. She calls her over, says, you bring the ball up, go create and make a play. And she does it every time. I mean, she is so good with the ball in her hand. She's smooth, which is why so many analysts and even WNBA players are mentioning she's just league ready. She's ready for the next step because she's already playing like that. Just quick little high level, Notre Dame dominated Duke in every category. 3-point field goal percentage, Duke was 1 of 9. Notre Dame was 6 of 18. Rebounds, Notre Dame 41, Duke 28. Assists, steals, points in the paint, etc. It goes on. I just think that second quarter really threw Duke off without a doubt, and Notre Dame played their game.
Yeah, Notre Dame really just put it away that second half there and really played Notre Dame basketball. I think you hit the nail on the head. When we talk about this, we spent almost a whole episode on it with Melissa Blackleitner talking about how Notre Dame can run in transition. They get the stop on defense and transition. They're, I think, one of the best, if not the best, transition team in the country. South Carolina shows that they've got a strong transition game also, but I think Notre Dame's better when they can run. But when they can't run, it's interesting. In the first half, I think they were exploited a little bit where Duke was able to slow them down. Mm-hmm. And there was a specific possession where Notre Dame hadn't had a bucket in a couple offensive possessions. And I'm watching Hannah Hidalgo at the top of the floor dribbling the basketball, and the ball's going nowhere. And there was nobody, not a perimeter player, not a post player, cutting or moving. All 4 players were standing there in their positions. And I think as a coach and having studied the game and having studied a lot of film, especially in college, for me is like, how can you continue to almost extend that transition game? And I would love to see Hannah or Liv or whoever's playing the one just go right into a dribble handoff on the wing, at least advance the ball to the wing and get some movement instead of them trying to play one-on-one ball up top of the key a lot. Like, how do they get into their offense more efficiently every possession? That'd be something that I'd be working on, because when they do shift the defense, like every other team on offense, when you can reverse the ball and have good ball movement and get the rest of your players moving on offense, you are going to open up the defense to having a lapse and ultimately getting a good look if you can stay patient and continue to move the ball. And I think it's been exploited a little bit that Notre Dame sometimes doesn't do that. They then rely on the one-on-one from Hannah or Liv. And you said it, Liv can go score. Like, those girls are playmakers. I'm not knocking it. They're capable of absolutely going and getting their shot off and getting to the rack and maybe creating that dish. But like, just go right into it. Why not
keep
go
the defense
right
moving?
It? Yeah, instead of standing up there dribbling.
Right.
And I just noticed that a couple times, and I think it choked them a little bit in the first half. That second half, you said it, they're getting defensive stops, they're running in transition. How can you keep that flow, keep that pressure on the defense every time? To me, it's like, just go into a dribble handoff. Yeah. Maybe I'm making it way more simple than it is. Or even let's run the Princeton offense, flash the high post, let's try to hit it, go screen away, let that post player go to work a little bit, open it up for the guards. Like, there are a ton of options there, and I just hate to see a team stand up there and dribble it. I think it's frustrating for me when you see some of that.
Without a doubt. This is how in tune we are. There is one thing I wanted to bring up after we talked about all these 4 games. All of these teams have had droughts where they just can't score. I'm talking like, Booker going 0 for 11, right? Or 1 for 11. And I'm not just picking on her. Notre Dame does it too. UConn has had those runs as well. South Carolina struggled to score. I just find it shocking that with these teams have so much star power, so much playmaking ability to break people down one-on-one. But where is the art of, back in our day, calling a play that is going to get you a guaranteed bucket when you're in a drought? And I just don't feel like we have that anymore. And maybe it's because the style has changed so much, but I think coaches are missing opportunities to, hey, I'm calling this play, run it and get that bucket. I mean, there were times in college it wasn't even a drought. It was just that's the play and that's who's going to score. And if it's a miss, somebody rebounds, right? Like there was just situational stuff where you needed a bucket and you wanted a layup. It wasn't, oh, I'm going to do it for a step back three. I'm going to do it for this. It was, I'm going to get an easy bucket because we haven't hit one in a while and we got to get going. I just don't feel like we have that anymore. And I feel like some of these really good teams, it's kind of like, wait, where'd that go? Have you noticed that?
Absolutely. I think we see this everywhere now. And Tennessee is a huge team to me that really doesn't do this. It's a run and gun style. I kind of chuckle a little bit. I'm like, is this the NIL era taking over a little bit where coaches don't want to put in set plays to get the bucket they need, to get the look they need down the stretch and whatever the time and possession is. And they're relying on these star players to take it over and have that spotlight and ability to do that. Maybe. Like, I just think it's interesting.
I just think it's crazy. When you need a bucket, go get a bucket with a play that's money. Everybody
Absolutely.
runs the play. It's money. Do your job, get a bucket, get us back on track, and then you can go to your transition and everybody can eat, right? Like let's get some consistency. And I think there's a nice blend, right? Merge the two styles of old and new, and I feel like that's where you're going to be successful.
Come watch us coach AAU and you're going to see a blend of it. We'll just see if we got some playmakers that can get it done. I hope they're listening right now.
Yes,
anywho,
agreed.
Let's jump into our third quarter. This is going to be a quick one. We're just going to highlight some upcoming matchups that we believe are worth watching. All on Sunday this weekend. Number 1, Notre Dame plays number 13, NC State, noon Eastern on ESPN. This one's a really good one, a good conference matchup here. NC State, a little inconsistent this year. We've talked about that, but capable of giving ND a game there. They're going to have to play a full 40. We'll see if they can do it. The second game that we want to highlight is number 17, West Virginia versus number 10, TCU. That's, again, noon Eastern on ESPN2. Number 25, Illinois is playing number 4, USC. That's 4 o'clock on FS1. This one could be an upset alert. Mm-hmm. Illinois is decent, is pretty good this year. I think what scares me for USC is I think USC sleeps on some teams. They turned around after beating UCLA and almost lost to Washington. So we'll see which USC team shows up against Illinois. They certainly can't play around with them. And then the last game here, number 7, LSU versus number 14, Kentucky, also at 4 o'clock on ESPN.
I will say what USC has going for them. It's at USC. So they'll have all the celebs and stars show up, hopefully, for this 4 p.m. game where they can take care of business. But again, Illinois, they've had some great upsets, so don't sleep on them for sure. All right, let's jump into the fourth quarter, our last quarter, where we're just going to talk about some in the news. This is an air ball. This is a miss. This is a turnover. This is a missed blockout. This is a bad foul. This is the ultimate WTF moment. I truly feel that way. So for those listeners that maybe don't know, I want to make sure I highlight her appropriately. Lisa Leslie. Lisa Leslie had an amazing WNBA career. She was a 2-time WNBA champion, 3-time WNBA MVP, 8-time WNBA All-Star, 2-time WNBA Defensive Player of the Year. She was the first player to dunk in a WNBA game in 2002. Huge. First one. Her international career, she has 4 Olympic gold medals. She has 2 FIBA World Championships. Her college career, she was Naismith College Player of the Year. She also won a Honda Sports Award. Get it? Other honors, she's She was inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame, inducted into the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame, but it's not only her basketball. Her impact extends way beyond her playing career. She continues to contribute to women's basketball as a coach and an analyst. So that is quite the resume, if I do say so myself. And I feel like people who maybe don't watch basketball or didn't know who she was legit. She was one of one. She was a GOAT. She was an anchor to the WNBA that really put it on the map. First dunk in WNBA history. Huge. All right, now that I've laid out how much of just an awesome individual she is, what we're going to talk about now is really the miss. Lisa Leslie joined Angel Reese's podcast where they got into some conversations where Angel was like, hey, would you ever think about coaching the WNBA? And Lisa said she actually put her name in the ring for 2 WNBA teams to be head coach, and she wasn't picked. How do you not pick Lisa Leslie to lead a WNBA team as a head coach? I'm also just going to add, even she mentioned the other 2 individuals that were hired were by no means more qualified than her. We don't know the teams. We're not going to get into that. I'm not even going to try to dig into that. It wasn't even released. I don't care who is coaching in the WNBA. I think her and Becky Hammon are like top tier, most qualified. Stephanie White is up there as well, as she has her own repertoire and resume. But how do you not pick Lisa Leslie to lead a team or take a chance, not knowing the WNBA turnover for coaches has been pretty up there, right? Lisa Leslie is a mentor, a staple to the women's game, and this is just an absolute awful turnover. Sid, what are your thoughts?
An absolute miss for sure. Like when I saw this, I was just shaking my head. I almost couldn't believe it because she is, to me, maybe the biggest household name in women's basketball. I mean, there's some top contenders out there for sure, but Lisa Leslie, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Lisa Leslie, and you went through all of her accolades, but she is women's basketball. And you think about all those different teams and successful championship teams she was on and all the different coaches that she had, and then turn that around with her playing experience and just overall years commentating and watching the game and studying the game. There is nobody more qualified to me. And I understand like maybe she didn't coach in college and whatever it is, or maybe hasn't coached in the WM. I don't care. Like from a knowledge and expertise level, there is no doubt in my mind that she could flat out go right to the WNBA and be a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
And what a miss on the business side also. If you're
awful
in the front office of the WNBA right now and Lisa Leslie is putting her hat in the ring, I don't know what the criteria is to select the coach and all that stuff. And I'm sure, let the teams pick. Like, that's fine. But man, you're sitting there going, please pick Lisa Leslie. So many people would show up for those games. So many people would get behind that team because she would be such a great face for that program and she would back it, right? She's just a quality person all around. And I don't know. I think it's a crazy miss. Like, and then she's flat out tells Angel Reese, like, I'm not going to put my hat in the ring again.
Mm-hmm. Terrible. That's awful.
That's a bummer. I'm
Absolutely.
like bummed. I would have loved to watch that. So it's rough. I will say, like, growing up, she was, for me, that woman figure that I looked up to. So my first pair of basketball shoes were Lisa Leslie's, and I thought they were like the coolest thing. And then fast forward to college, we were playing the Olympic team in one of our exhibition games, and she blocked my shot and literally turned to me and said, "Get that out of here."
Oh my gosh.
With maybe an explicit thrown in there. And I just thought to myself, Lisa Leslie just blocked my shot. Like, this is the coolest thing.
That's amazing. Did you get the ball and say, "Can you sign this after?"
Amazing. But like, for me, she was women's basketball. And I get it. Like, maybe she had her peak when I was growing up and all this stuff. It's like, no, she was the face of it. And so I just think I'm bummed for her. I'm bummed for our game. I'm bummed that both teams passed on that opportunity. It was a miss overall. What a miss.
I think it's even more sad to hear her say it herself, right? This
Right.
wasn't breaking news that somebody leaked. She came out and said it. And it's like, man, she's a staple in the WNBA. You know that. They still talk to her. They still talk about her. She's an analyst for some college and WNBA games. I mean, she is around because she was the one that set the precedent of what the league was going to be. And I'm going to take a thing for that Skylar always says, you walk so I can run. I mean, like, that is how impactful she was. And I don't know those two WNBA teams, but that's going to get around and people are going to be very disappointed. Could you imagine being on a WNBA team and being like, you found out Lisa Leslie they didn't pick her to be your coach? I'd be like, what? How? How?
Such a bummer. Absolutely. Yeah.
Ugh. Wah, wah. Well, we end on kind of a sad note, but I think this all in all was a good episode today, Sid.
It was good. And we've talked about it. There's so much going on in the game right now. So many good games. Like, you could tune in. We talked about those games coming up on Sunday and watch women's basketball all day. And I just promise you, you won't be let down because these games are just so good. The game is fine tuning itself right now. Iron is sharpening iron. There's so many good players out there, so many good coaches, so many good teams. It's just so much fun. I love it. It's fun for us to just come on here and talk about it every week.
Absolutely. So looking back, our first quarter, we had some top 10 upsets we highlighted. Jumping into our second, we had some top 10 teams that handled business, and we have a new number one. Notre Dame is now ranked number one. I don't know if we mentioned that while we were going through it, but UCLA fell, so Notre Dame is now number one. In our third quarter, we talked about some great upcoming matchups for everybody to check out on Sunday. And then our fourth quarter, we talked about some in the news and just an awful turnover and a missed shot. It was bad, but we'll survive and advance and live another day. It was great chatting with you, Sid.
Great talking to you, Beck. And just a reminder that we've got our Printify store out there. So look to our socials, get that link and buy some 28.5 gear if you're interested. And also hit us up on our socials. We're going to have a team huddle coming up. Want to answer any questions from you all. So go ahead and submit those if you got them. And we'll talk to you all soon. Thanks for listening.
All right. What a great week. Let's head into another one. See you, Sid.
See you, Beck.
That's the 28.5 final buzzer for today's episode. Don't forget to hit follow and download on your preferred podcast platform to catch every play-by-play. New episodes drop each week throughout the season.
If you've enjoyed our courtside chat, drop us a review or follow us on our social media accounts where you can send us questions that may be selected for our Team Huddle Q&A episodes. And remember, from females who have played the game, the size of the ball matters.